Well, I'm excited to be back. It's been a couple of weeks. We had to take a week off because of Davis's birthday,
Right.
but now we're back at it. And I gotta say, like, wow, 3 weeks and look at you. You're all clean shaven, all like trimmed up. Like, what sparked that?
Well, I started growing this beard for the COVID. Because I worked at the temple, you have to be clean shaven to work there. And when they closed the temple down, I said, I'm not going to shave until they call me back. And to begin with, it was supposed to be in April. A year later, I still had the beard. So I decided that I'd shave it off just for this video, just because I'd never had one before, except for I'd let it go for a month maybe before when I went fishing or something.
Heck yeah, you always got to have a beard when you hunt or you fish. You gotta look the part, right?
Yeah, the bad guy. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like that. So, so you shaved off your beard. Did you get called back to the temple? Are you working back at the temple yet?
No, they still haven't. They've opened up part of it, and I know a couple of guys that are working now. They've opened up for baptisms for the dead a little bit, but it's still a very limited opening. So I'm hoping pretty soon.
Right on. What part of the temple do you work in?
We are assigned all through the temple. You move every half hour, and you go on half hours and on 4 hour shifts, and so you work all of the stations.
That's cool. So do you work throughout the whole temple, or is there just in the baptistry, or do you
No,
work?
you work through. For the first 13 years, I just worked in the baptistry, and they just had baptistry people. But that was when I was still working, and they had a session that was open from 5 to 7 in the morning, and so I would go out at 4:30 and work until 7, and then I would change my shirt in the car on the way to work and go straight to work, and did that once a week for about 13 years.
That's awesome. That's amazing. So, how did you get called to work in the temple? I mean, how did that all like go down?
Uh, I the bishop turned my name in, and they called me out of the temple and asked me if I'd work, and I told them I couldn't do it during the week, and found out they had this session in the morning and so that would work, and so I went from 5 to 7. After I retired and went on the mission, then when I came back, then I went during the day, and then it was a 4 hour shift instead of just 2. And then you move all the way through the temple. You can do all the different stuff.
So, did they at least give you free lunch, or is it just all like straight out?
There's nothing free in the church.
Oh man.
No.
I don't know about, like, I'd be kind of bent, I'll hold it against my bishop, like turning my name in. It's like, it's like getting turned in by the police, Now I gotta work.
I was actually quite elated, actually, that they would that he thought enough of me to turn my name in. Actually,
that's quite an honor. I mean, to be recommended for something like that. I didn't even know that you had to be recommended. I thought it was just like you raised up your hand and said, "Hey, I want to do this."
no, you have to. Then they give you an interview. I went and was interviewed by the temple president. And it was quite funny. He said, "Now, what about your wife?" And I said, "I'm single." So I wonder, he asked me that after he'd already set me apart.
Oh,
But I was single at the time.
I think. Well, that's the thing. I know the church changed And it's been fairly recently. It's I want to say it was like 10 years ago. Well, not 10 because you worked there for 13 years. So it's been it's been a while ago, but they did change that. It used to be that if you were single, you couldn't be a temple worker, and they
Really?
changed that. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was kind of a big deal when they did it. You know, it was because it was more inclusive. You know.
Right.
So there's still certain things about being single that like you in the church can't do. You can't be a bishop,
No, I knew that.
and so there was a time where you couldn't be a temple worker. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was in, I guess, and then they didn't tell me I couldn't do it.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you know that's pretty cool though. That's cool. Is it? I mean, like looking back on being a temple worker, is it something that you've seen like have a positive effect in your life? Have you seen blessings come from that? I mean, what's it like being a temple worker? I mean, I honestly like genuinely have zero idea because like I don't, other than you, I don't know any temple workers.
I've been so blessed my whole life that I don't know that I didn't notice anything uh, better because I was working in the temple, but it was a great honor, and I loved doing it. I felt like I was being of service to our kindred relatives while I was in there. Made a lot of friends.
That's cool. No, that's definitely like, yeah, I was just something that you don't talk much like is members of the church or even anybody like it's not something that because when it comes to the temple people don't talk about it, so that's why thanks. I have no idea about all this stuff. I'm not a temple worker,
There you go.
so
We can fix that.
I think they got to recommend me. And I don't know, like, I think my bishop loves me enough that he wouldn't.
We wouldn't do that, no.
No, I'm just kidding. So, but, it's interesting you talk about service and you say that, that you appreciate, serving and serving other people. And that's something that I've seen, like, in your life. I've seen that, with people around for years and years and years. I've talked to people about that. Like Brent Taylor, used to speak very highly of you and the service that you put out there. Looking back on your life, what are some of the most memorable events where you've given service, where you've like somebody's like been in need and you were there?
I don't, I don't think that I don't know, kid. What to say? I always like people, and I like helping them if I can. And I don't know. I've had some real good friends that I tried to take care of when I was going on, but I spent a lot of time in the church and different callings and stuff.
Well, let's expound on that. Like, let's talk about young men's. I mean, you were in the young men's for a lot of years, from what I understand. I don't know.
Yeah, I was a young men's president 3 or 4 times, and over the years, and it's quite odd actually. They called me to be the instructor for the elders quorum president, and I did that for 4 or 5 years. And one day the Elders Quorum president came to me and released me, told me he didn't think I was spiritual enough to teach the class.
What the hell are you talking about?
And 2 weeks later, they called me to be the young men's president, so I didn't follow that one at all. But anyway.
Oh, no, that's that's one thing that you do that I appreciate, and like I follow that example is you march to the beat of your own drum, and I mean that in a positive manner. It's not saying that like you're just like off on your own, but you definitely have a testimony and believe and know what is right and do what is right, but not necessarily the way everybody would think it. And that's the way I do. Like that's the way I roll is beard and long hair, and I've always had long hair, and so definitely I appreciate that. So when it comes to service, and I'm going to circle back, I'm going to push you a little bit on this because I do want you to think about it because it's something that interests me. It's not, I'm not looking for a specific answer or anything like that. It's just a story where maybe you felt that was special for you as far as performing service. And it doesn't have to be like, anything, miraculous or anything like that. It's just, I'm just curious, like if you have something that has meaning, because there's certain things that I've done in my life for service. I try to, like you said, take care of my fellow man and do good things, but there are some that like, I hold pretty dear.
On something like that, I don't dwell on it. I can tell you stories where people have done service for me, and several of those. But to try those kinds of things, you just do them and forget about them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I had a real good friend of mine, Gene Perry, that I used to go goose hunting with all the time. And he helped me with reloading. I reload everything, and he was an expert in that kind of stuff. I used to melt my own lead and make my own bullets and reload all my own shells, all of them, for all of the guns that I own. And he got Parkinson's disease and got pretty bad. And he went into a rest home, and his wife called me, and he was having problems with dementia. And she said, Gene Perry's in this rest home. Now, I'd done what he told me to do. Goodbye. And so as soon as I found out where he was at, I went and started visiting with him. And I was one of the few people that he knew, and I'd go up quite often. And she called me one day, and she says, if you want to still see him alive, you better get up there. And so I went up, and he was in a coma, and I put my hand on him, and I said, my good friend. And he passed away the next day. And they had a funeral service for him up at the cemetery, just a graveside service. And when I got up there, his wife was not, had no idea what to do her. So I said, do you want me to take care of this for you? And she said, would you? So I ended up calling it to order, gave a prayer, gave the talk, dedicated the grave, and talked about his life some, and left it anyway. She was really appreciative of that, but I don't know. I try to help my brothers a lot, family members, if I see anybody that needs help, I've always said that really people don't sacrifice their time or their energy when they do stuff for other people because of the rewards that you get for yourself. It's like I talked about Ephraim Hanks when he went out to meet the Martin Handcart Company. And he was out in the snow and he got the buffalo, and you know the story. But
Hey, tell the story. Was it,
well, Ephraim Hanks is actually a shirt-tail relative of ours. He married my great-grandmother's, well, it's going to be your great-great-grandmother's sister. But anyway, he was called to go out, and he took a wagon as far as he could go, and then he unhooked the wagon and just took a couple of horses and went on and shot a couple of buffalo, and then went on and brought the buffalo into the saints that were starving to death out there. But he said, when they saw him coming, the cheers that went up, and the reward that would, the personal feeling of the gratitude that they had for him was a great reward, I would think. And I feel the same way when I try to help other people like that, because of the gratitude that they give you. I actually feel like I gain more than I give.
No, that's well said. And that is the great thing about that example of service and true love and charity. Like, that's the whole thing, is people talk about charity. And what is charity? Well, charity is the pure love of Christ. It's the ability to give without accolades. Because the accolade you get is just love, reciprocated.
True.
And that is something that I have always appreciated, is the example of service and charity and love. So what you just said about getting as much as you give, now I know that is something that is very big amongst your family, like, your direct family. No, I mean, and I'm excluding myself. Of course, I'm your direct family. I'm your son. I mean, but and you have I have my brothers and sisters, and they're very, very similar in a lot of those ways. But I mean, specifically your brothers, and you have a very special relationship with them. And I've seen the service that they have given to you and you to them. And there's one story you talk about hunting and different things like that I would love to hear again, and that is when you went up to the top of the mountain with my brother.
Well, yeah, this was back when Philip was like 14 years old. And we went out to Davenport every year, and we'd go up the canyon, and we had a parking lot where we parked, and then we would hike about 2 miles up to the top of the mountain.
Yeah. this is the same canyon where your dad was like driving around, people honking because you guys had to get to the rock first.
Yeah, you had to. Yeah, there was a narrow road that led up to it. And anyway, there was, you went through these willow trees and stuff on the way up there, and then there was kind of a open space where you could park 6 or 7 vehicles, and then from there, then we hiked up to the top of the mountain. And we used to do it in the dark with my dad and my dad and brothers, and we'd get up there at midnight, and then you'd start hiking up the mountain. And you'd lose the trail all the time, and so I decided that what I was going to do is hike up the night before in the daylight, and then camp on top, and then it would be a lot easier to go up the mountain. And so I left with Philip after work and started out there, and it was drizzling rain. And there was this one spot where you had to drive down through the bottoms and go on up to get up to the parking lot. And we had a 2-wheel drive pickup, and I'd back up, and it was a stick shift, and I'd get a run at it as hard as I could go and spin, but when I shifted, I'd lose that momentum, and I didn't quite make it over the top, and then I'd back up and make another run at it. There was finally a guy came with a 4-wheel drive and pushed me up over the top, and so that I could make it to the next hill where the parking lot was. And I never had any money for equipment and stuff, and so I had a black garbage sack and cut a hole in the top, and it was raining, and I just pulled it down over my head, and that was our rain gear for me and the kid, and he was wearing tennis shoes. And anyway, I never had a tent or anything, but what I had was a piece of plastic, and I carried that up the hill, and his mom had made us little hoagie dinners, and I had some canned heat, and they got that. It was Army issue type stuff, and it just come in a little can, about like tuna fish can. But it had propane, paraffin wax and stuff in it, and you could get a fire going with that. We got up the top of the hill, and I stretched a rope between 2 trees, and then draped this piece of plastic over the top of the rope, and then put some rocks around the edge, and that was our tent. And built a little fire and got something to eat, and it got dark. Well, then it started to rain pretty hard, and then the rain turned to snow, and it got deeper and deeper, and it probably was, 14, 16 inches deep overnight. And what had happened is as the snow got deeper, it would push the edge of this plastic in, because there was all it was a rock, and I had it closed in, and so it was started to sweat, and I had a fairly good sleeping bag, but Philip's had Mickey Mouse on it or something. That thing wasn't designed for no cold weather. And I was really nervous for him, and so I slept on top of him all night long, and never slept at all. I shouldn't say I slept on top of him. I was on top of him trying to keep him warm. And the problem was every time you'd roll over, because the visqueen had pushed in, every time you moved, it would wipe the drops off into the, and we had got in our sleeping bags with our clothes on, and so we were soaking wet. And I didn't know what I was going to do. It was blowing hard and cold, and I decided that what I was going to do is spend the night there, and when it got light, I try to make it back to the truck. And with two-wheel drive, I didn't think I could get out of there, but I thought I could keep warm. And so I stayed there all night long, and the sun started to come up, and just barely getting daylight, and I was just about ready to get out of the tent. Here come three of my brothers over the top of the hill, and Mervyn had brought with him one of these fireplace logs that is easy to start fire with, and they came and got a big fire going and said, "Stay in the tent until you get to the fire, and then you can dry out, and then we'll get out of here." And the thing about the Merv that I got to tell you is that what he had was a brand new Ford pickup. I mean, that was brand spanking new. And there was, like I said, it was about 18 inches of snow, and not all the leaves were gone from the trees yet. And so with that heavy snow on it, it was down covering the roads. And he told my other two brothers, he says, "We don't care about the truck. We're on a rescue mission here." And he come busting up through them trees and stuff. It ripped his antenna off in the rearview mirrors, and scratched the side of his truck. And anyway, they brought up some hot chocolate and stuff, and we sat around the fire until we dried out. And then we hiked out, and he'd busted a trail through with his truck. So my two-wheel drive made her out to the bottom, and we got home. But anyway, that was my Phil, I think, got a little frostbite on his feet, but other than that, we were fine. I might add, we never got a deer.
Well, that's the important part, you know.
Yeah, really. But anyway, it was. It's been that way with our brothers all along. If one of us needs help, I was playing cards once with me and Paul and Mervyn. They got a call, and the car was broke down out by Lagoon, and this was like midnight. So we grabbed a few tools and some stuff and went out and dropped his driveline and drug him back home. It's been like that. I was down helping my brother John pour cement, and he says, "You'll do this with all of anybody, won't you?" And I says, "Just the ones I like." He says, "But you like everybody." So anyway, yeah, it's a pretty close relationship with. My dad told us when I was a kid. He said, "Your family is like a bundle of sticks, as long as you stick together and help each other out. Nobody can break you, but you can take those sticks and break them one at a time. So you can fight amongst yourself, but don't you ever turn against one of your family with somebody else." Never did.
Oh, for sure. And I've seen it. You know, it's excuse me. It's something that's very recognizable. the Arnolds and the relationships that they've continued to cultivate and take care of one another. And like, not too long ago, just like right at the beginning of the pandemic, I know that you went up to Midway with Merv and dug out a sewer system. What was it? What was that with Paul at Paul's?
Yeah, what happened was they got a the sewers broke out at the main line, and so me and Merv went up there with a friend of his, and we was down in the trench for 4 or 5 days digging and replacing the sewer line for him. He was Paul and my brother had a stroke, and he was down at his cabin in Capitol Reef, and they left to go down there just because they didn't have the sewer system was clogged up, and they couldn't even take a shower or much of anything. So they left, and we fixed it while they were gone.
That's awesome. And that's the thing is, just clarification purposes, it's one of those things that if Merv could probably have just paid to have somebody come out and fix, or you could probably like split the cost. But it's something else. Like that's what I take away. It's such a great example is that it's not about just fixing the problem, it's being a part of the solution. And like that's what I appreciate is it's a wealthy man that gives you money is not nearly as worth, it doesn't have near the worth of a busy man giving you their time. So that's pretty cool that you guys still do that to this day. I mean, you're 77.
Yeah.
So you think about that. You're out there, digging a ditch at 77 years old. That's thug. I'm sorry, dude. That's old man muscle right there. That's pretty badass. Tell me some other stories about some experiences you've had with your family, like in that regard, like where you've looked out for one another.
I'm going to tell you a fishing story just because I want to.
There you go. Break it down. Let's hear it.
I had a brother, my older brother Bob, and he was 4 years older than me, and he was really, really good to me. But anyway, my dad liked to fish. Well, he was a sportsman, and he fished, and we'd go on the opener of everything. We went on the opener of deer season, and we'd go Saturday morning and hunt until evening, and then we come home, and that was it for the year. But we went on they used to have an opener fishing season, and we'd go on the opener fishing season, the open pheasant season, all the rest of it. So anyway, we used to go up to Brighton when I was real little, and rented some cabins and stay up there. So I was with my brother Bob, and I'm only like 5 years old. And the first fishing pole I had, Dad would go cut a willow, is what he did. And Mom had long hair that she braided, and then would put it like a crown over the top of her head and hold it in place with some hairpins. And these hairpins, the only way I can describe them is like a paper clip that's been straightened out. So they had that curve in it, so he bent those and took some electrical tape, and then taped them around the willow, and those were the eyes of the pole. And then he had this old reel that he taped to the other end, and with some line and stuff on it. And so that's what I used, and I'm like 5 years old. So we were up there fishing, me and Bob, and I caught a fish. But this fish, in order to be legal, had to be at least 7 inches long. And this fish wasn't quite 7 inches. But this is my first fish, and I didn't want to throw it back. And so he said, well, maybe we can stretch it. So we start pulling on it, and didn't do any good. So he said, well, maybe if we clean it, maybe it'll make it so that the head will flop back a little ways and we can get it to be 7 inches. So we cleaned it out and didn't work. He said, well, maybe we can pull on it a little bit now and make it. So we tried that, and it pulled the head off. So here I am with the fish that's like about 4 inches long. So he sticks it in his boot, and we head back. Well, we get back to the cabin. Mom always had this little brownie camera that she'd take pictures of. Bob had a pretty good string of fish, and so she was going to take a picture of it. And I says, well, I want a picture of my fish too, And here I am standing with holding this 4 inches of fish by the tail. And he's got this string, and she said, okay, son, you can, but just stand a little bit over here. And so I did, and when we got the picture back, I wasn't in it.
Oh.
But anyway, from there, I've always loved to fish. I've done a lot as far as I've fished all around. I've been to Alaska 4 or 5 times. I've been to the Great Slave Lake with Grandpa Booth probably 6 or 7 times. And Mervyn, we went up to the Thurbin Lakes and the Tree River and the Great Bear. And anyway, I fished for marlin and in Mexico and in Panama and all over. So anyway, I just wanted to get that out. I love to fish and have done.
Oh, that's awesome. And you actually, like, I'm sorry, I don't want to say it's a claim to fame because it's not, but it is like pretty, lack of a better term, and no offense, bitching. You fished with President Nelson.
I did. Mervyn was in the first quorum of 70s, and President Nelson liked, well, he had, I'm not sure how many girls he had, and his last one was a boy. And so President Nelson wanted to go and take his son with Merv. They were pretty good friends, and so we went up to Alaska, and I spent a week fishing with President Nelson up there with his youngest child, this boy. I had a real good time.
Now, I got to clarify. How old was this youngest boy? Because you make him sound like he's 12, but President Nelson's like 90-something.
He was in his 40s.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, he was 40-something years old when we went up there, but it was a real experience, and he was a very down-to-earth guy. He talked about, I asked him if he was like to hunt, and he said, I've never shot a gun in my life. He was in the Korean War, he said, and they issued him a rifle and told him he had to take it with him and wherever he went. And he says, I carried it everywhere I went, but he says, I didn't even know how to load it. So he enjoyed his time with Merv up there, and Mervyn has been up there to Alaska with President Nelson like 5 or 6 times now. But yeah, Merv took me, and there was President Nelson and his son and President Wells, and then me and my brothers all went. So it was a fun trip.
So was Paul and John there as well?
Yes, they were. Yeah.
That's cool. Did you all like watch your language?
You know, they put me and Paul together. And we slept in a room by ourselves. And then we tried really hard while we were around President Nelson to watch our language. But then when we got alone, then we could say a few words of our own.
There you go. That's something that I always joke about is, you know, growing up, like, I profanity was just a part of our language. I just didn't realize that it was like a negative connotation, you know?
There's not.
That's what I'm saying. They're just words.
Yeah. Yeah. It just, I learned it quite young, I guess, and never let it, even when I was on my mission, they called me out on it, and I says, the members don't even know what I'm saying. So, because I was, I was in Peru, and they didn't. But I wasn't saying anything real bad. But there's just a few words that just come out automatic.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm with you. Did you get that from your dad? Was it Jasmine? Did Jasmine swear?
No. Mom and Dad, I never heard it. I only heard my dad swear once in my life.
What?
Really? He just did not. And Mom was as straight as there was. I picked that up from the neighbors and maybe older brothers.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You can blame the neighbors, but I know where I picked it up, and it was my dad. Okay, yeah. I learned it by watching you.
Yeah, there you go.
No, that's funny. So you've been fishing with President Nelson. That's pretty cool. I mean, really, you think about that. You got to hang out with the president of the church and just be on a
Yeah, I used to tell guys. I said, "Here, I'll show you a picture." I said, "Look, me and a few of my friends went fishing together," and I'd show them President Nelson and me and my brother standing there fishing.
That's so cool. I'd be like, yeah, he kind of just waved his hand and all the fish jumped in the boat and just really took all the fun out of it. But hey, what do you do? That's cool. So you've been fishing pretty much all over, North America and some in South America. Is there any particular fish that you're super proud of that you caught? I mean, other than the 4-inch headless.
The 4-inch headless. Well, I caught when we was up the Great Bear Lake. I caught up a big fish, and the one that got away. And we were fishing. The water is up at the Great Bear. The water is cold. It's only water about 6 weeks out of the year, and the rest of the time it's froze over. But I was fishing right on next to where the stream came into the lake, and I caught one, and I reeled it in, and it was underneath the boat, but the water was so clear you could just see it. And it was huge, and it went one way, and then it went back the other. And I put a little pressure on it, trying to get it to come up, and I could just watch the lure come out of its mouth and slide up. And I was really disappointed with that. But I had one up at the Great Bear, up at the Great Slave Lake. I was there. It was the first day I'd ever been there, and we went out by this island, Doll Island, and I caught a fish, and it was about a 33-pounder. And it was 10 o'clock in the morning of the first day of a 7-day fishing trip. And up there you can bring back one fish, one to eat, two fish, one to eat and one to mount. It was a trophy lake. And so he said, well, that's a nice fish, but if you catch one bigger, you're going to have to throw it back. And I thought, well, geez, I don't want to have to throw back a bigger fish. And so I held it up, snapped a picture, and threw it overboard. And I've been up there 7 or 8 times and never caught another fish that big as long as I was there. I've caught some big ones though. We caught up to Flaming Gorge. We caught some that are 25, 27 pounds. But that was the biggest one I ever caught, and I threw it back. I've got a couple of them mounted down the basement, but they're not that big.
I know the exact photo you're talking about.
Yeah, there you go.
It's blowed up on the wall.
Oh, that was Paul's fish, actually.
What? Okay, so now I've been lied to my whole life.
No, that one was about 35 pounds. That was out fishing, and we got he caught a fish, and we'd been arguing with the guide, and I said, "Oh, shut up and get the net." And he looked down, and he said, "I forgot the net." And here we got this 35-pound fish, and we had these yellow jackets on. There were three of us, and we started waving these jackets. I started waving my jacket back and forth, trying to get their attention. And finally, they came over and said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "We don't have a net." And so they come shooting up one side and threw the net in the boat and just kept going. I grabbed the net and reached down and hooked that thing threw it in the boat, and the lure dropped out of its mouth. And but anyway, so we got it, but it was close. But that was Paul's fish. That picture I got hanging down on the wall. I held it up and had my picture taken with it, but that wasn't mine. That wasn't the one. If I'd have had that one like that, mine was about that big that I threw back, but if I'd have been holding it up by the fire, I sure as heck wouldn't have been back in the water. I'd have had that sucker on the wall. Anyway.
No, that's cool. So who was with you on that trip? Was it?
There was me and Paul and Bob, and me and Paul and Bob and Mervyn went up there.
So you went on a lot of trips with your brothers.
Been on 4 or 5, yeah, together fishing. Mervyn took us. He wanted to fish, and his kids were too young, and so his wife said, "Well, why don't you just take your brothers and go?" And so he did a couple of times, three or four.
That's cool.
Going up again this August. He said this is going to be the last harangue. So we'll see how that goes. My one brother, he passed away, so he won't be there, but the rest of us will.
21 years.
Yep, since he passed away. Bob was quite the guy. He just took care of me. I'm not kidding. The whole time I was growing up, he taught me how to fish, and he'd get the line out there. At first, he taught me how to cast, and back then, the reels weren't like they were free spinning. And if you didn't stop it just as it was hitting the ground, then it would backlash like you can't believe, and he'd untangle them, and he'd get a little upset with me with it, but then he'd put the line go around the tree, and then he'd tug on it like it was a bite, and I had to set the hook. I had to practice it. But the thing he did for me was with baseball. And we had this big barn, and there was a chicken coop there. And it was just about exactly the right distance from the barn to the chicken coop to pitch. And so he'd take me out by the chicken coop and pitch to me, and then I would hit the ball. And I'd hit it back in the barn, and the barn was big enough that even though you hit it up, it'd hit up on the roof and just roll back. And we spent hours after hours out there doing that, and then he'd hit me fly balls. And Dad used to take us out and hit fly balls and stuff, and we'd catch them and play. But anyway, when I got, I was playing Pony League, and back then they didn't. It wasn't pay and play. They had sponsors, and they would. I played for the Orr's Feed Mill, and you went and tried out, and they had a lot of kids try out, and you made it or you didn't, and it was quite competitive because and we didn't pay anything, they were sponsored. So anyway, I got so that the old coach was hitting him, and he says, "Is that guy in the yellow shirt the only guy who can catch a ball out there?" Because I was with that practicing with the head. But anyway, there was one kid on the team. His name was Ray Bird, and he used to call me Sparrow. And, I hated that. And one day I'm out there in center field, and this guy hit the ball. And as soon as he cracked the bat, I knew I was in trouble. That thing was. So I just turned my back on the ball and just started to run as hard as I could go. And it was quite a high fly, and I kept running and running, waiting for it to drop. And I looked over my shoulder, and there was the ball just coming down, and I stuck my mitt out and caught it and hucked it back in. And, he said, "Nice catch, Sparrow." And after that, I decided that it didn't matter what your name is, it's what you do with it. After that, they still called me Sparrow, but it was with respect, and I didn't mind the name at all. But anyway, it was, we played the whole season and never lost a single game, not one. Anyway, I loved baseball.
How long did you play?
What's that?
How long did you play?
I played until I played Pony League, and then I had this paper out. I told you about that. And so in junior high, I didn't try out for the team because, and they told some of the roommates that some of our mates, they said, "You ought to come play." I said, I like the money. So anyway, when I got in high school and they tried out for baseball, I went out to try out, but they had been over and scouted the junior high teams, and they passed out suits, and they sent us out by ourselves. And so after I went out 3 or 4 times, then they didn't do anything with us. They just waited for us to drop, and so I dropped out and started running track. And but anyway, I really liked the game. I used to play a lot of church ball and stuff.
Did you play? I remember you used to play softball.
Yeah, church softball.
Well, you played with Shenanigans.
Oh yeah, we had I played on a couple of rec teams, the Shenanigans, and I played for Colonial Lumber one year. I played. Bob, he was the one that was the softball player, though. He was a lot better player than I was.
Well, I remember when you played at Shenanigans, you had you had a special sort of hat. It was not a ball cap. Wasn't it like one of those... I don't know. Because it was like, an Irish pub or something.
Yeah.
So didn't you have like one of those like Andy, what do you call them?
Yeah, the kind of a, yeah.
The cap that's like, like, I don't know, like the Irish cap. Help me out here, Marcus.
Is it like the newsy hat?
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't know what to call it.
Yeah. Anyway, almost like a Kangol, I guess.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, that's cool. That's cool. I did not know that you played baseball that much when you were a kid.
Yeah, I played Little League for a couple of years. And I started out when I was like 11 and played until I was 14.
Okay. So that the first team that you played for, you said the mill. What was the name of the mill again?
Orr's Feed Mill.
Orr's Feed Mill. So what was your mascot? That's what I got to know. If you were the Orr's Feed Mill team, like what was your mascot?
We never had a mascot.
What?
It was no. It was just we had our suits, and they had Orr's Feed Mill. There was one team that was sponsored by Reams grocery stores. There was I don't know. Winder Dairy had a team. I played for Winder Dairy one year. They just had different sponsors that were around, but they didn't have mascots and women running around or any of that stuff.
Man, boo. Like,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah. Well, at least you were the OFMs, you know. You can come up with your own acronym with that, you know what I'm saying? You know, yeah. There you go. That's cool. Well, that's the thing is really honestly it's always interesting to hear like some of these stories that like you know I didn't know, and I always appreciate like different aspects. But really, you know, if I'm going to say anything about tonight, it's the service that I've seen with not only you but with your entire family, and you know, not just service for one another like your dad said, but your service for your fellow man. And it's something that I know has translated and is been passed on to not only my siblings, but also, you know, your nieces and nephews and different things like that. And there are many, many, many other stories of service that I know about. And, you know, really honestly, it's like it's not to gain accolades or to pat yourself on the back. It's just an opportunity to share like some of the moments that have meant things not only to you but to other people. And I know that that story of Merv and Paul and Claudia, was it Bob or was it John that was coming? It was the three of them, or was it just that came up and got you and Phil?
Oh, it was all three. It was three of them. Johnny was in Hawaii
Okay.
at the time, so it was Paul and Bob and Merv that came.
And that's you know, there's other stories that I'd love to hear because I've heard Bob's rendition. I have it on tape of you know, going to the hospital with Dave, and you know, you have other stories where they've bailed you out of more than one big one.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah, we've helped each other out for sure.
for sure. And so those are stories that we could circle back with in the future. But again, it's thank you very much. It's always a joy to come down here and chat with you. And like I'm going to tell you, it's a little disconcerting now that you got like this baby face going on. You know, it's throwing me off. You know, you don't look like Santa anymore. But you're very handsome, very, very, very handsome. I have to say that because I look like you. So.
There you go. I agree.
So, but thank you very much again, and it's thanks to Marcus and a shout out, and you know, to this opportunity we have to be here. So, and for my Red Bulls, those were special for me. So
There you go.
you got anything you want to close with or say or anything before we
No, I
call
don't
it a
think so.
night?
I think that's good.
All right then. Well, thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.